Do you ever struggle with putting names and faces together, kind of remembering a name and a face? Or have you ever been hurt by someone and you just simply want to forget them and can't manage to get them out of your head? Well, guess what? In the book titled Self-Development, A Handbook for the Ambitious, written by Addington Bruce, in this previous chapter titled Memory and the other chapter titled The Art of Forgetting, you can actually learn these skills that not only will help you personally, but will help you in your business, will help you in your relationships. I mean, seriously, how wonderful it is when somebody greets you and they remember your name. You feel so special. Or how painful it is when you're trying to remove something from your mind and you just can't understand how to disconnect. So at the same time, these are wonderful development tools that we can learn for ourselves. So please do, if that is something that you want to work on, grab those chapters and you will learn exactly how to do that. And with that, I want to say welcome to my channel. I'm glad you found me. And to our subscribers, welcome back. Let's move on now to the next chapter titled Grow in Initiative. Initiative is the ability to reason out a course of action and to take that course decisively and energetically. It is one of the basic elements in business success. Without it, a businessman need never hope to travel far. However great his mental power, unless he possesses the quality of independent and energetic action, he will always be among the laggard in the business world. For that matter, initiative is vital to success in human activities generally. During the World War, a certain steamship crossing the Atlantic was waylaid by a piratical German submarine. The submarine's presence was not detected until it was very close to its prospective prey. Then it was useless to attempt escape by flight. The situation seemed hopeless, capture and sinking inevitable. But the captain of the steamship, signaling to the engine room for full speed, instantly changed the course of his vessel so that it bore directly on the submarine. At once the tables were turned. The hunter became the hunted. Frantically, the submarine sought concealment in the depths of the ocean. Too late. There was a crashing impact, and that particular submarine could never again do devil's work for the Kaiser. Quick and intelligent planning, decisive acting had saved the steamship. Confronted by an unexpected problem, the captain had reacted to it with a striking display of initiative. Do you react somewhat similarly when confronted by unexpected problems in your daily work? Do you attack them boldly and confidently? Or do you wait for someone else to instruct you what to do? Still worse, do you figuratively or actually wring your hands in impotent indecision? Indecision, that of a truth, is the direct opposite, the supreme enemy of initiative. The world is full of people handicapped by it. So common a defect is it, so serious may its consequences be, that the world's greatest dramatist, Shakespeare, rightly took it as the theme for his wonderful play, Hamlet. You have probably seen this play. At any rate, you doubtless have read it. And while throughout your sympathy has been with the unhappy Prince of Denmark, you must have marveled at the indecision he displayed. A little more decision on his part, and the series of tragedies closing the play would have been averted. The wicked king could have received his just deserts without others being involved in his punishment. Hamlet himself would not have perished, but then the play would not have been what it is, a forceful preachment of the harm that may be wrought when a man is of so wavering a character that he cannot make a definite decision as to a course of action and resolutely put that decision into effect. Hamlet, you will remember, was cruelly tortured all through the play by his own indecisiveness. Any man who cannot bring himself to decisions is bound to be similarly tortured in some degree. There even are cases in which indecision may be so extreme a character defect as to amount to a disease. To give one instance, a well-known Baltimore specialist in nervous and mental troubles was consulted one day by a man who seemingly was in excellent health. He complained, however, of feeling constantly fatigued and drew a touching picture of his sufferings. Finally, he made the astonishing statement, quote, "I find it hard not only to do things, but even to decide what to do. This is true of the most trivial matters. Sometimes it takes me hours to dress, for I cannot make up my mind what clothes to put on for the day. I lay out one suit, then I discard it for another, then I go back to the first, and so on. The choice of a necktie gives me unending difficulties." End quote. Other persons suffer from a peculiar form of indecision known to doctors as folie de doute. Such persons are strangely undecided as to whether they have or have not done things which other people do automatically and with no afterthought. As one of these unfortunates said to his physician, quote, "After I get into bed, I begin to worry whether I have turned the gas jet off properly. I get up and try it, go back to bed, and then begin to worry again. Nothing will do but I must try and retry the gas jet, finally holding a lighted match to it to see if the gas will ignite. Even this does not always satisfy me that the jet is really turned off. I remain in a terrible state of anxiety until I fall into a fitful doze. In the same way, I am decided as to whether I have locked the front door for the night. Sometimes I go downstairs several times to make sure the door is locked, and then I remain undecided about it. I live in a perpetual cloud of doubt and indecision." End quote. Pathological cases like these are fortunately of rare occurrence. But any man or woman who allows habits of indecision to grow is liable, under certain conditions, to find it necessary to call on the services of a medical specialist. And in any event, a habit of indecision in its mildest form is a handicap to success. Those who succeed best in any calling are, as said above, men and women able energetically to make up their minds about every problem that confronts them, great or small. Of course, it is necessary to think, to weigh pros and cons before coming to a decision, but the thinking should be brisk and vigorous. It should not be an aimless, dreamlike wondering. And this is precisely the kind of thinking in which the indecisive man indulges. Accordingly, if you find that ability to come quickly to decisions is not one of your dominant traits, begin to cultivate that ability without delay. You can cultivate it, don't doubt that. The most indecisive man in the world can make himself a model of decision if only he will recognize his weakness and set about correcting it. For indecision, if partly a matter of temperament, is even more a matter of habit. And as it always is possible to replace a bad habit with a good one, the victim of indecision need not despair of curing himself of this particular bad habit. In the process of cure, the first essential thing for him to do is to be willing to make mistakes. Fear of making mistakes is one of the principal causes of indecision. Yet, as experience ought to teach all indecisive folk, their failure to decide of itself often involves them in terrible mistakes, just as it did Hamlet. So, once an issue is presented to them, whether it be great or small, their resolve should be to come to a prompt decision about it. They should not, render snap judgments, but neither should they endlessly mull over a thing, raising all sorts of unreasonable as well as reasonable objections to deciding it one way or another. And it needs only a comparatively brief period of enforced decisiveness, persisted in at the cost of a few mistakes, to give them as fixed a good habit of decision as their previous bad habit of indecision, of forever asking themselves, "I wonder just what I ought to do." Only they must persist. They must allow no exceptions to the rule of deciding promptly. To allow no exceptions is the cardinal principle in forming habits of any kind. Moreover, just as indecision is fatal to initiative, so is the common habit of dawdling. Most people who are chronic dawdlers, however, do not appreciate the extent to which their dilatory ways decrease both their power of initiative and their efficiency in general. If anything, they are inclined to pity hustlers as persons who wear themselves out to little purpose. And undoubtedly there is such a thing as being unwisely strenuous, a fault which, under certain conditions, is disastrous to health. But the fact remains that men are so constituted that briskness of thought and action is of prime importance to them. The man or the nation that habitually dawdles need not hope to realize the possibilities inherent in human nature. To appreciate the truth of this, one has only to contrast the development of the brisk-thinking and brisk-acting nations of Europe and America with the backwardness of the dawdling peoples of Africa and Asia. The progress and efficiency of every man depend in chief measure on his ability to energize himself. This in turn depends chiefly on the set of his brain, the central governing organ in the management of the bodily processes that cooperate in the production of nervous energy. The brain, for its part, acquires its set largely from the mental and physical habits of its possessor. If these habits are of a dominantly dawdling type, the brain becomes set to the production of a minimum of energy. It issues its commands, as usual, to the adrenal glands, the thyroid gland, and the other organs of energy-producing potency. But it issues its commands to these organs less imperatively, and they respond less vigorously. Then, too, the habit of dawdling directly impairs the efficiency of the brain as the organ of the intellect by diminishing its functional vigor in respect to concentration of attention, memory power, and so forth. As Professor Seashore in his Psychology and Daily Life states, quote, "Psychology teaches that by forming right habits of attention, we may improve at the same time in efficiency and ease, and thereby vastly increase our comfort as we increase the value of our lives. Dawdling is the common violation of this principle of efficiency. Schools often encourage it. It is the aimless and ineffective strain and dull endeavor that prevents attention from rising to heights of efficiency." End quote. Therefore, if you are forced to acknowledge that you are one of the dawdling sort, acquire habits of briskness as soon as you possibly can. Train yourself, even in the commonest acts of everyday life, to think and move more briskly. Don't dawdle over your dressing, your shaving, or the eating of your meals. When you go to office, factory, or store, walk briskly. This, of course, does not mean that you should tear madly through life. By so doing, you would only set your brain at an abnormally high level of energy production and consumption. Be rationally, common-sensibly brisk. It may be, however, that your dawdling habits are the result not so much of faulty training as of some physical ailment. This is notoriously the case with the dawdling prevalent in tropical and semi-tropical countries. To eliminate such a possibility, have yourself examined medically. The chances are that a doctor will give you a clean bill of health. If he does not, put yourself in his hands and follow his instructions conscientiously. He can help you to lead a brisker, more efficient life. Which reminds me that indecision itself, like dawdling, is sometimes a direct product of unfavorable body conditions. The man who would conquer indecision should follow the example of the repentant dawdler and have himself medically examined to make sure that he is free from physical defects and weaknesses that might promote indecision. Also, because of the influence of bodily conditions on mental processes, the decisive and the indecisive alike will find it a great help, so far as ensuring soundness of judgment is concerned, to make it a rule, except on occasions of emergency, to postpone until the next day decisions on matters of importance presented to them in the evening or the late afternoon. Not a few men instinctively adopt this rule, as indicated by their custom of sleeping over any important question. Time is thus gained to think about the question and, what is equally important, to reach a conclusion regarding it when the mind is fresh. Most people, unfortunately, give far too little thought to the influence of fatigue on the power of judging soundly. For that matter, most people do not give enough thought to the influence of fatigue on the mental powers in general. Fatigue, as suggested in the chapter on memory improvement, is much more than a matter of feeling tired. It is a physiological condition affecting particularly the cells of the brain. And it is the result of a subtle chemical process set in action by work. Fatigue, says the illustrious authority on the subject, Professor Mosso, is not produced merely by the lack of certain substances which are consumed during exertion. It depends also upon the presence of new substances due to the decomposition within the organism. Specifying further, Professor Mosso adds, quote, "These substances are toxic in character, yet they are not so much poisons as drosses and impurities arising from the chemical processes of cellular life, and are normally burned up by the oxygen of the blood, destroyed in the liver, or excreted by the kidneys. If these waste products accumulate in the blood, we feel fatigued." End quote. Note this last sentence. Note that the feeling of fatigue is dependent on the accumulation in the blood of the toxic products of exertion, is in fine resultant from a deterioration of the blood supply. Note also that the manufacture of these toxic products begins when we begin to exert ourselves and continues as long as we work. Necessarily, therefore, they are present in the blood in greater quantity in the afternoon than in the morning. What this means is that our brain, which depends for its nourishment on the blood, is less well nourished in the afternoon than in the morning, for the blood supply is less pure in the afternoon. As an immediate result, the ability of the brain to function effectively declines as the day wears away. There are, of course, individual differences. Some persons are so constituted or have formed such good working habits that fatigue products develop in them far less slowly than in the average person. But for practical purposes, these exceptions may be left out of account. And even in these cases, the brain undoubtedly functions less effectively in the late afternoon than in the morning. The consequence is that the mind, of which the brain is the mechanical organ, the central telephone exchange of the mind, as Bergson has called it, is less capable in the afternoon of grasping all the implications of any problem submitted to it. Remember this physiological consideration the next time you are confronted with the necessity of making an important decision. Give sleep, the arch foe of fatigue, a chance to reestablish your brain in normal equilibrium before you come to a final judgment. And, if only for the sake of increasing your power of initiative in general, adopt whatever means are available to you to keep as physically fit as possible. Initiative presupposes energy, and energy goes hand in hand with physical fitness. Let a man systematically upbuild his strength, quicken his circulation, and stimulate his nervous system through exercise in the open air, and it stands to reason that he will feel far more inclined to do things than he would if physically inferior. At the same time, the exercise he takes, through its beneficent action on his nerves, circulation, and general physique, will tend to increase in him feelings of self-confidence, which is most fortunate, since self-confidence is one of the essential elements in initiative. The man who distrusts his own powers will always be slow to act, will always hesitate about coming to decisions and striking out for himself. End of chapter. Stay here as we continue on to the next chapter titled Poise and Personality. Again, if you like this content and you have someone that needs to hear this information, please do share it with your friends. All right, let's move right in. Poise and personality. With initiative as a success-winning quality should go what is known as poise. This implies in its possessor repose of manner, calmness, quietness, emotional control, and it has the special value of greatly enhancing one's personal influence over one's fellow men. Other things being equal, the well-poised man always has a distinct advantage in dealing with people as compared with the excitable, unpoised man. It is quite true that there have been excitable men of uncommon personal power. Their excitability, however, has been only occasionally in evidence, and it has been a hindrance, not a help, so far as the exercise of personal influence is concerned. Even those who find in it something not altogether unattractive recognize it as a weakness. They allow themselves to be favorably influenced by the excitable one's personality, not because of the excitability, but in spite of it. And if a choice has to be made between two leaders, one well poised, the other excitable, there can be no question as to which will be chosen. Always poise, with its unconscious revelation of well-controlled energy, will carry the day. That devil of a man, said Van Damme of Napoleon, exercises a fascination on me that I cannot explain even to myself, and in such degree that, though I fear neither God nor devil when I am in his presence, I am ready to tremble like a child. And as a further illustrating the compelling power of poise, it has been more agreeably said of Daniel Webster, quote, "The mere look of the man and the sound of his voice made all who saw and heard him feel that Webster must be the embodiment of wisdom, dignity, and strength, divinely eloquent, even if he sat in dreamy silence or uttered nothing but heavy commonplaces." End quote. How, you now ask, shall I, who know that I sadly lack poise, proceed to acquire it? Your first endeavor undoubtedly should be to acquire emotional control, and you can best make a beginning at this by training yourself to react calmly to the petty annoyances of everyday life. You can hardly say that at present you do this. Only this morning, when the toast was burned and the coffee not exactly to your liking, you fumed for a quarter of an hour. Later, journeying to the city, you spluttered all the way because your train was 5 minutes late. Just now, waiting to keep an appointment, you wriggled uneasily in your chair, walked to the window half a dozen times, played nervously with your watch chain. These are trifling things, you protest, of no particular importance. They are of this much importance that they constitute an incessant waste of nervous energy and betoken a habit the reverse of calmness and poise. Make a start by controlling yourself in these same little things. You will have to do this soon or late if you really wish to become poised. And the sooner the better, for control in little things is more than half the secret of poise. As someone has well said, quote, "Poise is power under control. Poise stores up energy and keeps it in reserve for special use. Poise keeps you calm and deliberate under varied circumstances." End quote. Day after day, the first thing on awaking, the uncontrolled, the unpoised should say to themselves with emphatic reiteration, even if necessary, going to the length of putting their assertion down in writing, quote, I know that something is going to occur today calculated to annoy me. Something always does. I will not let it catch me unawares, will not let it draw from me expressions or even indications of irritation, worry, or fear. Whatever happens, I will maintain a calm demeanor. I will not snarl or frown or show an undignified uneasiness. I will recollect that I have put myself on guard against myself and will take pains to behave accordingly. End quote. In the case of the uncontrolled, it must frankly be added, it is impossible that this good resolution will be kept to the full from the outset. There are sure to be slips from time to time, but persevering, the conquest of the trivial will soon or late be complete, and it will be found that in conquering the trivial, a degree of control has been gained really fitting one to meet manfully the severest of tests. Whereas, by endeavoring to secure self-control in critical emergencies without first acquiring control in merely vexatious situations, no headway whatever can be made. The old habits of control deficiency will persist, kept in action by the foolish fretting over the trivial. In the quest of poise, moreover, it is of real importance to acquire the habit of speaking slowly. The speech of the poised is never the speech of breathless haste, nor is it the speech of exaggeration and superlatives. Exaggeration of thought and feeling should likewise be avoided. It is always desirable, of course, to be an enthusiast, but over-enthusiasm is fatal to poise. So is pessimism. When things go wrong, do not let depression grip you. Take advantage of the opportunity to cultivate the courageous optimism without which you can never be truly poised. It may be, of course, that tendencies to irritability, excitability, and pessimism lamented by you have their roots in a manner of living so unhygienic that you are in a chronic state of nerve fatigue. If so, make a change in your living habits the first step along the road to poise. Question yourself as to any habit that may be a drag on your nervous system. If your nervous system is manifestly below par, undertake seriously the task of rebuilding it. The discipline of keeping regular hours, of working and playing regularly, exercising regularly, going to bed in good season, etc., will both directly and indirectly contribute to gaining for you the poise you crave. As your nervous system approaches normal, emotional control will be correspondingly easier. As an additional aid in the gaining of poise, make it a point deliberately to assume the bodily posture of poise, the dignifiedly erect posture of quiet, manly confidence and self-control. Our outer bearing, remember, does more than mirror inner attitudes. It helps to intensify them. It helps even to create them. If we train ourselves to look calm, determined, and controlled, we shall more and more feel and be calm, determined, and controlled. Experience has repeatedly demonstrated the truth of this. Though always, I need scarcely add, care should be taken to utilize development through posture as merely supplementary to development through conscious reshaping of one's ideals and moral traits, which is particularly necessary so far as the exercise of influence over others is concerned. Poise alone will not ensure this. To poise must be added personality, well defined by John Hayne Holmes as that peculiar spiritual power which leaps like flame from soul to soul and makes a man a leader of his kind. Dr. Holmes further enumerates as the distinctive marks of personality thought, feeling, and unity, which means that personality, happily, is something that can be cultivated. For while unity admits of no modification, thought and feeling do. Consequently, a man is of strong or weak personality, hence influential over others, according to the ways he thinks and feels. He must be, for one thing, an active, vigorous thinker. He must throw himself with real ardor in whatever he undertakes. And of the utmost importance, he must have self-respect. Men cannot be effectually influenced by those they do not respect, and any man who by his words and deeds shows that he values himself lightly is bound to be held in light esteem by others. As remarked by a close student of the psychology of leadership and personal influence, subordinates' respect for their chief is at bottom but a sympathetic reflection of his own self-respect. He passes current with them at the value he has set upon himself. And the man who would lead must not only have self-respect, he must in a high degree have self-confidence. Suppose, on the eve of an important military movement, a captain called his men together and said to them, "Men, we have ordered to drive the enemy out of his advanced positions tomorrow. It is a big job, and we can carry it through only by pulling together. I am sure you will all do your best and not get discouraged if things seem to go badly." Would not this leader's evident lack of self-confidence be instantly sensed by his men? Might it not so lessen their confidence in themselves, so disorganize them as to render the issue of the morrow more than doubtful? Contrast the effect if he said to them, "Boys, we're going to start the enemy on the run tomorrow, and we're going to make him run as he never ran before. Everybody ready when I give the word." It is the same in life, generally as in military campaigning. A self-confident leader can get results where one lacking in self-confidence will soon make it evident, painfully evident, that leadership should never be entrusted to him. Furthermore, the man who would grow in personality and thereby extend his influence over others must be sincere. Otherwise, he will be about as influential as a certain candidate for public office of whom the story is told that, in the course of an address which was winning him loud applause, he was seen to turn and wink at a friend seated near him on the platform. From the moment of his wink, his address fell comparatively flat. He wondered at the audience's changed attitude. He wondered still more when election day came and he was soundly beaten at the polls. Yet the explanation was simplicity itself. Rightly or wrongly, his audience of voters had interpreted that wink as a sign of insincerity, and the balloting was consequently certain to go against the winking one, if for no other reason than that people will not knowingly entrust an insincere man with the conduct of public affairs. It is the same in all professions, in all walks of life. Insincerity repels, sincerity attracts. And the insincere are soon or late relegated to the obscurity and ignominy they deserve. Nor does one have to betray his insincerity by winks or nods or shrugs of the shoulder. It shows itself subtly through his face, his words, his general bearing, no matter how guarded he may be. Quickly suspicion crystallizes into certainty. The spoken or unspoken verdict is, That man is a sham. He is only talking for effect. He does not mean what he says. Look out for him. The very handshake of the insincere is enough to put others on guard. Always it is either a clammy handshake or an offensively ardent one. In either case, it sets the nerves on edge. And the eye of the insincere is a telltale eye. There is in it no gleam of honest enthusiasm, of genuine sympathy, but a lackluster, calculating, selfish hardness that reflects unerringly the heart beneath the smug exterior. The effort to stimulate sincerity is too hard. No insincere man is capable of it for any length of time or on all occasions. And once self-betrayal occurs, a penalty is certain. The heavier, the longer it is delayed. Sincerity must be accompanied, too, by common sense if influence over others is to be ensured. There are plenty of sincere people quite uninfluential because of their fantastic, foolish modes of thinking. A crank may be the most sincere person in the world, but what does his influence amount to? Besides which, as hinted above, if the sincere are to be influential, they must also be humanly sympathetic. To influence others, one must have a hearty fellow feeling for them, be willing to extend a helping hand as occasion demands, to cheer, to comfort, to console. In fine, be able to put oneself fully into another's place and think and feel with that other. My inclination, indeed, is strong to affirm that no other quality is so necessary to the exercising of personal influence as the quality of being truly sympathetic. Certain it is that every man deficient in this quality is heavily handicapped in whatever occupation he chooses for his life work. He may know his business from the bottom up. He may have great mental gifts, yet he is sure to be left behind by men duller than he, but of a bigger heart. More and more the truth of this is being appreciated in the business world. In a talk to a group of salesmen, a New York businessman, C. Lewis Allen, reflected the growing appreciation of the value of sympathy in dollars and cents when he said, quote, "There is a word I want to dwell on: understand. You must learn to understand your fellow man and woman. Most of the difficulties and the trials and the strife that we find in this world in all fields, political, economic, commercial, and religious, are due to lack of understanding. When I understand your problem, I have a sympathetic relation to you, and when you put yourself on this side of the table, you say, 'By George, it is not such a cinch as I thought it was.' You see, we get together and we understand each other's viewpoint, and there is one of the biggest things in the world. So if you are going to be a successful salesman, get back of all that cold science of salesmanship and get right on the other side of the counter and earnestly and sincerely try to understand the other fellow and see things from his viewpoint." End quote. In other words, be careful not to let yourself become too self-centered. That is what is wrong with many people. Always, in one way or another, they are asking themselves the question, what is there in this for me? Their me is so all-important to them that they cannot, or at any rate they do not, give any thought to the problems, the feelings, the thoughts, the desires, the rights of the other me's they meet. Necessarily, they antagonize other people. Necessarily, others look on them as cold, hard, selfish, grasping. And necessarily, they lose much business which otherwise would be theirs. From a strictly business viewpoint, therefore, it pays to be sympathetic. It pays to gain a fraternal understanding of the men and the women with whom we daily are brought into contact. Which means, let me add, that from a strictly business viewpoint, it pays to cultivate imagination. the unimaginative can never be genuinely sympathetic. It has even been affirmed that callousness, selfishness, and cruelty have their roots in lack of imagination. Sincerity, common sense, forcefulness, ardor, self-confidence, decision, sympathy, keenness of imagination, these above aught else are the qualities that need to be developed by all who would draw on the aid of personal influence in pressing forward to the goal of success. End of chapter. All right, before you head out to the next video, do hit that like button, leave me a comment, and subscribe to the channel.